Well, here we are, another stop on the journey to finding hope, inspiration, and positivity in this crazy world we all live in. You are listening to Changing the Perspective podcast. If you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel and like this video below. If you are listening on a podcast service, please like our podcast on your preferred service. No matter how you choose to hear this interview, we are grateful you are following us on this journey. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Changing the Perspective. Today I'm here with another individual that I met in our wonderful podcast community that we have online. Everybody connecting that way has been so fun. I know COVID has made that a way bigger thing, just supporting each other in that community. And Megan actually posted something about being kind of a relationship coach, a parenting coach, but something about blended families. And most of you that are watching this know that myself and my now husband have blended children and the whole family thing together. And so I was very kind of fascinated with this concept because we've had our own struggles and I know lots of families out there have. So welcome. Thank you so much for being on our episode today. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Shanna.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you and how you kind of got into doing all of this.
So my husband and I have been married it'll be 11 years this month, actually. When we got married, we each have 3 children, and we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. We thought, we love each other. And I had this idea, I love kids and kids love me. I'm going to be the best stepmom ever. And quickly reality hit us in the face when we got married, and nobody knew how to give us advice. Nobody knew how to show us the wisdom that we needed. And it was a struggle. In the first probably 2 to 3 years of our marriage, we felt like we were just constantly on a treadmill and nothing was improving. So we didn't know where to go. We tried to go to our pastors because we are Christian. We tried to go to our pastors, and I remember very vividly our pastor said to us, normally when I do marriage counseling, if there's somebody of the opposite sex that's causing issues in the relationship, the answer is to eliminate that person from the relationship. And he's like, I don't know what to tell you because they're still your kids' mom. Like, I'm sorry, I have no wisdom for you. We went to some traditional counseling that honestly gave us some horrific advice. It's so common for people to say, well, you knew what you were getting yourself into, or, just some horrific things. And it just didn't fit. We didn't fit. We didn't fit into the traditional mold of what a family looked like. And that's really when I felt like, okay, so if the resources aren't there, why don't I develop the resources? Mm-hmm. So I went back to school. I am in my final semester of my pastoral counseling degree, and the majority of my research has all been around the blended family. I wrote a book on the blended family marriage specifically, and the different tools that you need to implement in your blended family marriage in order to have a successful marriage. And I have we coach blended families. We do our YouTube channel for blended family coaching. And that's kind of how it all evolved, because we felt that if we're struggling, surely others are struggling too. How can we help those people?
Yeah, I love it. So I guess kind of tell us, what are some of the things that you see instantly that, like blended families you're just going to go through? What are like your top 3 kind of struggles?
So the first one is finances. That's a huge one that blended families struggle with, between child support, and sometimes there's alimony, and sometimes there's, maybe child support's not being exchanged, but when the kids change houses, all of the clothes go over to one house and don't come back, and those kind of struggles, and that's expensive. And then on top of that, if there is any kind of custody arrangement that needs changed, you're looking at custody lawyers or court costs or anything like that. And it just really starts to snowball. And people in blended families, they come in with this idea, well, I'm responsible for child support, or I receive child support from my kids, and I have all of these bills that I'm responsible for and all of these responsibilities, and you have all of these, and it's never blended. And it's so common for blended families never to blend their finances. And that sets them up big time for failure, because the easier it is to separate, the easier it is to separate. And when things get hard, if you're not all mixed in, you can just say, I'm taking my money, I'm taking my bank account, I'm taking my kids, and I'm leaving. And we encourage them to have that conversation. What does your budget look like? What can you afford? What does your house payment need to be? What's your debt? What's your debt? And we encourage them to have that kind of conversation, and then develop a budget together and combine as much as they can. So that way it's not still like parallel living, it's really blended.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so what's another one?
The other one is boundaries. Setting healthy boundaries with the co-parents is huge. I recently did a podcast with a fellow stepmom, and she said, she titled her podcast, because I said this, I asked my husband, why is your ex-wife on my couch? Like, why is this a thing? Why are we even having this conversation? And in reality, it's also her kids' home. It's also her kids' couch. It's a place where her kids are comfortable. So she felt that she could be comfortable too. And I didn't have the verbiage or the ability to set those healthy boundaries. You cannot come into my home if I'm not here. You are my husband's ex-wife. That's inappropriate. And so many other people, they want to just appease the co-parent, and at the cost of anything, at the cost of making their current spouse uncomfortable or angry or jealous. And really what that comes down to is a lack of boundaries. And what we teach is, often if there's a common place of friction, that's because there's a lack of boundaries.
Yeah.
So if drop-offs or custody exchanges is a common place of friction, let's develop some boundaries there. If the ex-wife coming into making me uncomfortable is a common place of friction, let's develop some boundaries there. So that's a third one that just, it's so hard to do, and it's so hard to recognize when you're in the middle of it. But we find that because we're the outside looking in, we can say, okay, let's put a boundary right here. Let's put a fence up that this is not going to happen anymore.
Yeah. With that, I also feel like there's boundaries within the children that aren't yours as well. I think that, at least in our situation, there was this, I don't know, felt like you could push a line that maybe you shouldn't be pushing because, well, they're not my parents or whatever. And I actually interviewed my son, and we did an interview on growing up with divorced parents. And he actually talks about when his dad remarried, that he said, I was mean. I was angry that it was happening, and I just wanted to make her miserable. And whatever it took, I was going to do it. And like openly admitted to just being horrible, horrible.
Wow.
And so I feel like, at least, from a step parent standpoint, you have to be able to have some boundaries with the children that aren't yours. And for us, luckily in my marriage now, we had open conversation about like, hey, like I'll talk to my child about whatever boundaries you want, and you talk to yours about, whatever. But I feel like that boundaries can go in the children's way as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a better way to look at that, and especially with younger kids, house rules, whether or not that person is your stepmom or your stepdad or your biological mom or an aunt, you treat the people in our home with respect. And that would be a house rule, and that would be a house boundary that you can enforce with your kids, whether you're the stepmom or the aunt or whoever you are to the kids, as long as there's a clear communication of what the boundaries are and what the consequences are if those boundaries are crossed. That's a healthy way to establish house rules and just general home, the way that a home will function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on discipline? Because I know this is a conversation between lots of blended families, is sometimes only the bio parent wants to be the person that disciplines their own children. And while I understand that, there's times where those people are not around.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts with all of that?
There's two extremes, right? And I don't know if you're familiar with the blended family verbiage, but Laura, I think her last name's Sims. Laura and David, I think the last name Sims, developed the nacho parenting method. And basically, nacho kid, not my problem. Like, that is your child. You take care of it. You handle it. And that's one extreme. I have interviewed Laura and David and been on their podcast, and I don't necessarily agree with that to that extreme. And then there's the other extreme of, I am the mom in this house. I am going to make the rules regardless if they're my kids. And that's the end of it. So there's these two extremes, and I think both can be beneficial and both can be painful. So if you can come to this middle ground where under these circumstances, it's okay for stepmom or stepdad to be able to discipline or correct or put down, put down the law. But under these circumstances, then it's important that the biological parent steps up and does that kind of parenting.
Yeah.
And I think that if those are discussed and there's communication there, for example, if my husband's not around and his kids are, I'm not going to say, you just wait till your dad gets home.
Right.
That's ineffective. And I've lost all control and all of that. But at the same time, if it's a serious issue that really needs to be talked about and hashed out, I'm not going to have that conversation without my husband present or without both of the biological parents just being aware that this is a serious issue. So I think that open line of communication and being able to come up with that fine line it's a hard line to walk, but it's important to have that kind of conversation.
Yeah. So what is your advice with the jealousy factor? So, the bio parent that now is jealous that dad remarried, or the, father figure that's now jealous because the wife remarried. How do you handle that, or those kind of discussions with, the now blended family?
So you would ask me for 3 tips or whatever. And the third tip that I was going to say is walk the hard walk of forgiveness.
Okay.
And there's mourning involved in that. It's hard because I'm trying not to make this personal with just my situation, but it's so hard because I mourned the loss of what I thought my family was going to be. I had to mourn that. And when my ex-husband got remarried, that was just like another nail in the coffin. And we'd been divorced, and all of those jealousy issues came up and all of that. You felt that, but I think it's important to just acknowledge, this is why I'm feeling it. It's mourning. It's not because I wish I was still with him necessarily. We divorced for a reason, but just to being aware that that's going to come and being able to identify those feelings will get you so much further than if you're just like, oh, this is horrible and everything sucks and I can't believe he's with somebody new. Being able to talk that through with somebody that understands, maybe not your spouse, because if you go to your spouse and say, my ex-husband's getting married today and it kind of hurts, that's going to hurt your spouse. And so being able to somebody that understands and can help you identify what those feelings are. Jealousy is a secondary emotion. Like anger is a secondary emotion. Usually there's a primary emotion on top of that. So for me, it was sadness. I was very sad and mourning that this is another coffin in the dream in the family that I thought I was going to have. And when you can get to that level, you can deal with the emotion at that level. But you have to walk that hard work of forgiveness. I'm choosing not to hold this grudge. Maybe infidelity was an issue that destroyed your marriage, and now he's getting remarried, and is he going to be faithful to her? And I'm choosing not to hold on to that. And forgiveness is such an important part of that walk.
Yeah. Well, I think even in like my husband and I situation, I had been out of my relationship significantly longer than he had. And so when we started dating, he was still mourning kind of this is what my family was supposed to look like, and now it doesn't. But his kids are now adults, and they were when he left. They were older, and not like old, they're college. But he had to come to this realization of like, he's mourning this family idea, but yet they were going away for school and they weren't local. It wasn't going to be that same way anyway. And it was, he was still mourning in our situation. And so I think it can happen within the family as well. That's a hard one. That's a hard
It
one.
is a hard one. Nobody likes change. I always say the only person that likes change is a dirty baby that needs his diaper changed. And that's the only one that'll celebrate the change. And there's change, and there's a change in routine and a change in circumstances that need to be addressed and dealt with. And I think that so often, I'm not saying this was the case with your husband, that catches up to you like 2 years down the line.
Oh, yeah.
How come I'm so sad about this right now? Things are going good and I'm really enjoying this new relationship that I'm in.
Yeah.
But how come all of a sudden, and maybe it was a triggering moment like an anniversary. Anniversaries are hard for blended families because what do you do with that day? It's just a this was supposed to be a special day forever and it's not anymore. It's just another Tuesday or whatever. And that maybe it was an anniversary that just kind of has you in a funk, and that's going to present as jealousy. Like I was, I'm jealous that I'm not with this person anymore. Somebody else is enjoying this person, but it's really not. It's really just a mourning and a sadness that, like you said, the idea of what it was supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, and we did premarital counseling with a pastor. We also did with a normal counselor because we both came from relationship of scars. Mine was very abusive, traumatic. His was a little different. And so in that counseling, the counselor really talked about like there's a grieving process. And sometimes you go through it multiple times in the process. It's not like you just go through it once and then it's just over and you're done.
Right.
Like
Right.
you kind of rewind at some point back into maybe phase 2 and then you continue on, and like it's going to be around for a while. And so we had that set up, but I think typically that's not how it is for people. They just don't understand. And then, if I didn't understand it as the new partner, I would have probably been taking that worse. Like,
Yeah.
you're grieving your old person, but you're with me. Like, what am I doing wrong? Luckily, we had, been through some stuff together. So it kind of
Right.
helped. So, um, do you feel like your advice is different for families of younger kids that are blending versus older children?
We focus on the marriage relationship more than the parenting relationship.
Okay.
No matter where you're at in life, that your parenting relationship affects your marriage. So we do obviously hit on that, but we focus more. My heart and soul is for blended family marriages to be able to feed into them. Um, Kids of divorce are like 75% more likely to divorce themselves.
Mhm.
And I think it's our job to teach our kids what a marriage is supposed to look like. So
Yeah.
that way they don't get into the wrong kind of marriage. They know that they need to work towards it and they can have a successful marriage. So that's why we focus on more the marriage relationship as opposed to the parenting and style relationship. But just like in a marriage, any kind of marriage, there's seasons, right? You have like babies. That's a hard season when you're up all night and trying to nurse a baby and figuring all that out in the finances. And that's just an ugly, hard season. And then you advance into like the teenage years and preteen, where you're probably got kids in multiple activities and going from here to there, and you don't even connect, and maybe spending a couple minutes at night with your spouse. And then you go into the empty nest phase where you don't have any kids.
Mhm.
And in blended families, you could be in every season. You could
Yeah.
have new kids starting our hours blend, because we had his in mind and now we have ours. So we have babies, and then his are maybe older and they're in that teenage phase, and then you have yours that are maybe in the elementary school phase, and then they go to other houses every other weekend, so then you're empty nesters, and like that can happen. You can be in every season there in a blended family all
Yeah.
the time.
Right.
So that's what we address. Like, okay, we need to address this season. What does this look like? How can you guys better your marriage here? So I don't think that there's a difference. You just need to be aware of what kind of season you have.
Yeah. I just know we have struggled because they had more time with the past relationships. So instead of being young, my son was young when I divorced, and then I got into my abusive relationship. So he had to be part of that, which is horrible. But he was past the mom is divorced phase. My husband's kids, he divorced when they were like later in life. And so they had experienced mom and dad together longer. And so it's been interesting to see how my son has reacted to things versus his kids because of the length of time that they were experiencing that. Now, you mentioned the whole like show what a relationship should look like. And my husband and I are very much that way at this point. Like, just because they're in college, really, this is when they're finding their like real relationship kind of status or generally. And so, letting them know we didn't stay in something bad because it was mean, it was angry, it was not good. Now we're in something great, and that's what you should strive for. So we've been trying to do that as well. At that older age, it's been a little weirder,
Yeah.
for sure.
I
So
I I think that even the relationship's gonna be different. I don't know how old your kids are. You had mentioned that your son is, but
20, yeah, 23, 20, and 19.
so developing relationships with adult children is a challenge, whether or not they're your biological kids or your stepkids.
Yes.
That's a challenge. And
Yeah.
going from that transition from parenting adults to parenting children to parenting adults, that's a challenge.
Yeah.
And I think that that's when your actions are going to speak louder than your words. So if you as a couple can tell these now adults, our marriage is strong and we are a priority to each other, and then they see that every time they're around you, they're going to go, okay. And if they see the way a husband's supposed to treat a wife and see the way a wife is supposed to respond to that with their husband, they're going to say, okay, these guys are happy, these guys are healthy, and that's what we want. We don't want
Yeah.
when mom and dad were fighting all the time, or when they didn't spend any time together, or maybe they didn't witness the fights, but they did notice that things were tense when they were together, and they
Right.
never really did anything together. So I think that at that age, it's so much. You've told them everything you can possibly tell them, and that was such a hard reality for me. Like, I am done raising them. I can't influence them anymore,
Yeah.
except with my actions. And that's when you can see them start to pick up on what you're doing.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's been very kind of interesting because there was originally a resistance from all the kids all around,
Yes.
and then seeing them come around and kind of like certain things they say that the approval is there, like what they're seeing they're happy about, but yet they're not just going to come tell you like I'm happy about this or anything like that. And so it's been very interesting
They
for
have
sure.
all of those complicated emotions too, right? They're still
Oh
going
yeah.
through the mourning process also of what they thought family was supposed to be. And they have a loyalty to their mom, and I'm
Right.
talking about your husband's kids. So
Right.
to let you could be betraying their mother, and they can't, like, that's hard for anybody to deal with, much
Right.
less a 22-year-old that doesn't even know himself. Like, now he has to figure out all these other emotions.
Oh yeah. It
Yeah.
it was definitely a transition, um, for sure. Like it is what it is. But what was funny through all of that is I had lots of years to have conversations with my son about kind of how he felt about the divorce and whatever. And yet in my interview, I was still surprised by some of the things he said. And I was just like, I mean, they see so much. They saw how rough it was and how bad it was. My husband's kids, same thing. Like, although they were hurting a lot when he left, they, told their dad, we saw that you guys weren't really, close. It's not like you guys did a lot together. And so they see things, all kids, they see things, and you think you're protecting them from it. And maybe you are from the fight, but you're not protecting them from how you are around each other, really. And so that's a thing.
Yeah.
What advice do you give for people that have a hard time communicating with like the bio parents or whatever within, child plans and all that have to be made with those outside people?
If it's extreme to the point where and we've seen this so much, where threats are being made,
Yeah.
I'm going to take the kids and go away, those kind of threats, I always say stick to the written word. So text message or email, no exceptions.
Yeah.
Don't have those conversations face to face, and don't have them on the phone. If it's really just I and this is so hard, I people assume that once they divorce, they never have to deal with that person again. Well, that's that's such a false assumption. And
Yes.
they're like, I left you. Like, I left this relationship. Why am I still having these conversations with you? And if it feels like it's just the
Yeah.
same fight over and over again, I would encourage you to stop and really focus on the most important thing. Like during a custody exchange, I always go back to the clothes because this is such a common issue.
Yeah.
If the clothes don't come back like they went, you buy Gap or Baby Gap or whatever, and you send them to the mom's house, and then they stay at the mom's house, and mom sends the kids in Walmart clothes.
Yeah.
That's and as petty as that sounds, that causes so many fights in blended families.
Yes.
And what I would say, and then you fight about it at the pickups. What I would say is do what's in your control to change that. Quit sending the baby Gap clothes to mom's house. Put
Yeah.
the kids in the Walmart clothes that mom sent them with and send them home in that. Do what you can to stop the cycle of the fight, because she's probably firing on that drama and loving the drama and feels like she has control over you. Take it away.
Yeah.
And you only control what you can control. You can't control what she does. So if you can pull that back and respond positively, okay, sounds good, whatever. If you can pull that back and just respond positively, disengage, stop the cycle of the arguments. And that's what I would say. And if it's extreme to the point where screaming is happening and it really could be traumatic to the kids that would they witness it, bring it all to the written word. I will not communicate with you. We have a court order in place for a reason. Send me an email if you have any questions.
Yeah. Yeah. So my ex and I were actually friends. We still are, both remarried. We go to ball games together, not like riding together, but we can sit in the bleachers and have a conversation and, whatever. And we still had those issues. Like, I'm pretty sure on Fridays when we did exchange day, Ethan probably wore the same thing to school for an entire year because that was like the exchange outfit on Fridays. Because we both kind of had this, like, I've built his closet with this stuff and you've built his closet with that stuff. And every once in a while it's, hey, we've got this special thing. And I know you have his nice slacks. Can we have them for this event? Or, there are always random things, but I'm pretty sure for like an entire year, he wore the same outfit on Fridays.
Yeah. Once our kids got old enough to manage that themselves,
Yes.
like, once they were driving themselves, we're like, then go to mom's house and get it. I don't know what to tell you that you don't have your favorite pairs of jeans. Once they were old enough to manage that themselves. But we were the same way, this is what you wear to school. This is what you wear on those transition days. Just because it just got very frustrating when they come to our house. They're like, we have nothing to wear. What do you mean you have nothing? And it was just part of I can't imagine living in two homes. I would hate it. I would absolutely hate that. And we expect our kids to just fall into this 50-50 custody with no friction.
Right.
Why would we do that to our kids?
Right.
And I think that it's important that adults realize kids don't need to make adult decisions. Adults need to make those decisions.
Agreed.
And take back control of what you can control. So that way it makes the transition as easy as possible for the kids.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Oh, my son, not the most organized of children. When he started driving, I can remember, I'm pretty sure he kept an entire closet in his car just in case, like, he needed something at one of the other houses. He didn't have to go get it.
Yes, we have 5 girls. So I have 3 girls, he has 2 girls, and then we have our son. And our son was like the biggest in high school. We're like, seriously, where are your football pads? I don't know. Like, I have no idea. What do you mean you don't know?
Yes.
Where's your baseball glove? Who knows where my baseball glove is? Like, he was the most unorganized.
That's my son.
The girls are more concerned about clothes. Like, did my jeans come, or am I going to be able to wear whatever on this day? But Jacob was such a pill with his sporting equipment. Like, we're not buying 2 sets of football pads, kid. You need to figure out how to get them back and forth.
That was my son. I mean, totally. It was horrible. We did start buying 2 sets of like jerseys so that dad always had a set, mom always had a set, but the equipment part, we just had to pack a backpack and it all had to just go back in the backpack so that it stayed together. And then the jersey at least was at, each other's place. And so it was a lot. When he started driving, I think his trunk just became his locker room. Like, it just all stayed in there, and it was it was disgusting. It was, and people ask
why boys' cars stink so bad. I know why. Pick me.
It was so gross. And when he graduated, we agreed to get him a nicer car, and he wanted a small SUV, and that's what we got him. And now it takes over his whole car, where before he could close it away in his trunk, and now you get in and you're like, what? Ethan, it's open air. Like, you're gonna have to put that stuff away.
Can we wash some stuff, please? Yes. Yeah.
Now though, he's in college sports, they clean all that for him. So I don't have to.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good. Yeah. It's funny though, because we have this idea that once they graduate high school, it'll all be over. Like, I don't have to deal with a co-parent anymore. Well, I'm currently planning a baby shower with
Yeah.
my ex-husband's wife because we're expecting our first grandbaby, and stepmom is also going to be grandma to this grandbaby. So it doesn't ever end, between weddings and then babies and all of the things. You're dealing with this person for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And it's a blessing, right? It's a blessing that many people are going to love on my new grandbaby. It's a blessing that many people have chosen to love my kids.
Yeah.
But in the mix of it, when you're dealing with people that you really don't like and don't want to deal with, it doesn't look like a blessing.
Right. No, we haven't had to experience that. His daughter got married when we were super early in our relationship. And so that wasn't an issue. Like, I won't go, like, it's totally fine. And his daughter said, I don't really want her there. Like,
Yeah.
I've met her, but I don't know her. No,
Yeah.
that's fine. But now, we've been around long enough and the marriage is done and set and we've been going on, and there's going to be grandkids and all of that. And then his son isn't married yet. So who knows, what that looks like. And so we'll be experiencing that. We have not had to yet.
Right.
But
The,
it's coming.
the one that we have that is married, she eloped. So she called us. It was so weird. She called us. She's like, "Hey, guess what I did today?" I'm like, "What did you do today?" She goes, "I got married." Oh, okay. Like, what do we do with that information? And they've been married for 3 years. It'll be 3 years this summer, and their baby's due this summer. So that's the only one that we've experienced that with. But it's, you deal with these people, you deal with your ex-spouses and the co-parents of your children forever. It doesn't ever stop. It never goes away.
Well, and on top of that, holidays, having to alternate holidays or having to do Christmas Eve on one and Christmas Day at the other and planning around that. It's a lot for a blended family because you have to kind of try to get your plans in without being totally disrespectful to the other side. But yet you want all the kids together at the same time when you're dealing with two sides of bio parents as well as your blended family plans.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking weeks and months in advance having to plan that so everybody knows here's the date we're doing our stuff and it doesn't get messed up.
And then you add like in-laws, like our son-in-law.
Yeah.
They now want to spend time with his family. I'm like, we're adding another family? Like, what is this? Yes,
it's a lot.
It is a lot. It is a whole lot. And we learned early on to pick our battles with that. We never fought over Christmas.
Yeah.
If we have to fight you over Christmas, there's something wrong with us. Like we never fought over Christmas. If you want to be with us, come be with us. If you want to be with your mom or your dad, go be with your mom or your dad. We are not going to fight over this. And that it's turned into, because we never stood up and said, we're going to take the kids this Christmas. My husband and I have some amazing Christmas traditions that we do alone. And then we see everybody within the week between Christmas and New Year's. We eventually see everybody. We have amazing time. But Christmas Day is really quiet for my husband and I. And we've developed traditions by ourselves that we know we're not going to add stress to our kids on this day that's supposed to be about celebrating and family. And we're not going to add stress to make them have to travel or make them change or whatever. So we never fought over. That was something that we were like, it's just not worth fighting over.
Yeah. Actually, I think it was this last Christmas that we didn't do much because we had plans the day before and the day after. So it was like, what do you want to do? I don't know. Watch TV, hang out. So
not COVID, pre-COVID, we always go to the movie on Christmas Day. We go to the movies, we get popcorn and soda and hang out. And that's what our Christmas Day is, just the two of us. So
yeah. COVID threw a whole wrench into the world, not just the world, but blended families too, because now you were also contending with, you were doing school at home. Who's going to be responsible for that? In exchange days that maybe used to be done, like dropped them off at school in the morning, the other parent picked them up that night, wasn't happening. It was also weird. So what have you experienced or having to like talk about with that?
Quarantine is huge. So this nation is divided, and whether you stand on the mask, no mask, immunization, no immunization, quarantine, don't quarantine, wherever you stand, chances are your co-parent is the exact opposite. That I've noticed that. And like people are like, but she's not social distancing. She's not wearing her mask. And now these kids are going to come into my house for 10 days and they've been exposed to who knows what. Or I've noticed too, that they're being very irresponsible in no, this is the custody schedule. We're sticking to the custody schedule. I don't care if they have COVID, bring it into my house and we're going to, and that created a whole new, in fact, I think it was, I stand to be corrected. I think it was a custody case in West Virginia that a judge set a precedence. COVID will not change the custody schedule, period. So if a child is supposed to be quarantining according to the CDC because of an exposure, the custody exchange still has to happen. And that created a huge ripple in the blended family community. Like, am I horrible for not wanting my child that was exposed to COVID to now expose it to all of my other children at my home? Like, that was huge. And it never fails. It's almost like a rebellious thing. Like I have a spirit of rebellion because I'm not going to quarantine. I'm not going to whatever, because you are, and you decide what you're going to, and it just, that was so big. And then on top of that, people losing their jobs and still having to pay child support. And it
it's a big thing.
It affected blended families huge.
Yeah. So tell us what you're doing. Obviously, you mentioned kind of a podcast and you're doing all of that. So tell us how we find you.
So I do not have a podcast. We have a YouTube channel.
Our YouTube channel.
Yes. We are the Blended Family Marriage Coaches on YouTube. And you can just search that on YouTube and you'll find us.
Okay.
And then I also have written a book, and that's called Nana's Pearls, Bringing Your Blended Family Marriage from Broken to Blessed. No, I'm sorry. What is my book called? Nana's Pearls.
Okay.
That we'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Finding hope in your blended family marriage. There it is.
Well, if you'll send me the link, we'll make sure that the link.
I promise I will send you the link. I have the book right now. I can hold it up, but yes. And
you also do brokentoblessed.com.
Yes.
Run a website.
It's brokentoblessed.org.
Or .org. Oh.
Yeah. And you can find us there. All of our information, all of our YouTube videos are there. How to work with us is there. And we also have a monthly membership program where we do online coaching. Every week we do online coaching, and then we do individual coaching based on your need throughout that month to be able to build you into a healthy blended family.
Okay. So we will make sure we get all those links. If you'll send me the right links to everything, we'll get them in the description of this video interview so that people can easily find you and search you out. So what type of advice do you have for people that are currently either blending or kind of having some struggles with it?
The first piece of advice that I have is find a purpose for your marriage. I said early on that our marriage is to reflect what a marriage is supposed to be for our children. And that was, once we found that, we found a reason. Instead of fighting with each other, we're fighting for a purpose. And that just really helped us. And I've done several YouTube videos on the purpose of marriage, what's the point of marriage, and why you need a marriage, and understand what a marriage is supposed to be before you jump into it. Because we all get married for selfish reasons, but it's really not a selfish relationship.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to say before we
I don't think so. Thank you so much for having me.
No, I appreciate you. And for all of our people that are going to watch this, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel, like this video below, send us a comment. I'll make sure that Megan gets to see those comments that you list for us. Find her on YouTube. You can do the same. Subscribe to her channel. Like any videos that you watch, she would like to know that people are out there watching what she has to teach. If you're listening on a podcast, make sure to favorite our podcast on whatever service you're listening to. We would just enjoy that you're listening to us, and we would love for you to join us every week as we put out new content and some fun information. Everybody have a great week, wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, guys.